Hello everyone, my name is Bino. In this Math Olympiad question, we have to solve for x. Since we have the square root of x minus x and the square root of x minus x, we are going to let a to be equals to the square root of the x minus x, and for the square root of x plus x, we are going to let b to be equals to the square root of x plus x. But before we can continue, we have to define our limits. The term inside the square root of the x plus x has to be greater or equals to 0. And since this x is already inside the square root, the x itself has to be greater or equals to 0. The sum of these two positive numbers will always be greater than 0. The square root of x minus x is occurring twice. So the square root of the x minus x, it has to be greater than 0, but it cannot be equals to 0 because it's the only term inside the square root in the denominator. So the denominator can never be equals to 0. We have the square root of the x greater than x. Squaring both sides, we have x is greater than x squared. So our x minus x squared will be greater than 0. Taking out the x as our common factor, we have x into x minus 1 as greater than 0. So x would be an element from 0 to positive 1, but the 0 and the 1 are excluded. So from here we have the square root of a plus the square root of b. This is equals to the x divided by the square root of a. We multiply both sides of the equation by the conjugate of the left hand side. So we have the square root of a plus the square root of the b, and we are multiplying this by the square root of a minus the square root of the b. And what we do on the left, we also do on the right. So even on the right hand side, we multiply by the conjugate of the term in the left hand side, the square root of a minus the square root of b, and this is divided by the square root of the a. Since we have the result of the difference of two squares, the left hand side will simplify to a minus b, and this will be equal to x into the square root of a divided by the square root of a minus the square root of b divided by the square root of a. And a divided by a is equals to 1. A minus b will be equals to x into 1 minus the square root of b divided by a. Remember that a was equals to the square root of x minus x, and the b was equals to the square root of x plus x. So we substitute back the square root of the x minus x in the place of the a, and in the b we substitute back the square root of x plus x. In the place of the b, we substitute back the square root of the x plus x, and in the place of the a, we substitute the square root of x minus x. We have the square root of the x minus x, minus, we distribute the negative sign, and we have negative the square root of the x minus x, and this is equals to x into 1 minus the square root of the square root of x plus x divided, and we multiply this term inside the square root by 1 in the form of the square root of x minus the square x divided by the square root of x minus x. The square root of x minus the square root of x will be equals to 0, and minus x will be equals to negative 2x, which will be equals to x into 1 minus the square root of, we have a result of the difference of two squares again in the numerator, so this will simplify to x minus x squared divided by the square root of x minus x multiplied by the square root of x minus x. So we have two like terms which are multiplying each other. So we have the square root of x minus x squared, and we already defined that x is not equals to 0. Dividing both sides of this equation by x, we have negative 2 into 1 minus the square root of the x minus x squared, and in the denominator the square and the square root will cancel out, and we'll be left with the square root of x minus x. We have this positive 1, it moves from the right to the left, and it will be equals to negative 1. So negative 1 minus 2 will be equals to negative 3, and this will be equals to the square root of x minus x squared divided by the square root of x minus x. Multiplying both sides of this equation by negative 1, then we have positive both sides. Multiplying both sides of this equation by the square root of x minus x, we end up with 3 into the square root of x minus x, which will be equal to the square root of x minus x squared, and we square both sides of the equation, and we end up with 9 into the square root of x minus x squared, and on the right hand side we have x minus x squared. So we end up with 9 into the square root of x squared will be equal to x, and the square root of the x multiplied by negative x multiplied by 2 will be equal to negative 2x multiplied by the square root of x. The negative x squared will be equal to positive x squared, and this is equal to x minus x squared. We take out the x as our common factor, but we distribute the 9, so we end up with 9 minus 18 multiplied by the square root of x plus 9x. Even on the right hand side, we take out our x, the x as our common factor, and since we already defined that x is not equal to 0, we divide both sides of the equation by x, and we have 9 minus 18 times the square root of x plus 9x is equal to 1 minus x. Taking the terms on the right hand side to the left hand side, we have 9 minus 1 minus 18 times the square root of x plus 9x plus x is equals to 0. We have 8 minus 18 times the square root of x plus 10x is equals to 0. We arrange this in standard form. We have 10x minus 18 times the square root of x plus 8 is equals to 0. We divide both sides of the equation by 2, and 5x minus 9 times the square root of x plus 4 will be equals to 0. For the sake of this new equation, we are going to let a to be equals to the square root of x, and squaring both sides of the equation, a squared will be equals to x. In the place of the x, we are going to substitute a squared. In the place of the square root of the x, we are going to substitute a. From here, we factorize and solve. For the a, the factors of the 5a squared will be equals to 5a, and the factors of the 4 will be 4 and 1, and we have the negative here and that negative. So 5a minus 4 will be equals to 0, or a minus 1 will be equals to 0. So our a will be equals to 4 divided by 5, or a will be equals to 1. But in the place of the a, we are going to substitute back. So in the place of the a, we substitute the square root of x, and this is equals to 4 divided by 5. Squaring both sides of the equation, our x will be equals to 4 squared, which is equals to 16, divided by 5 squared, which is equals to 25. Since a is equals to 1, in the place of the a, we substitute back the square root of x is equals to 1. Squaring both sides of the equation, our x will be equals to 1 squared, which is equals to 1. But remember that x was an element from 0 to 1, where the 1 and the 0 were excluded. This solution will be inadmissible. Instead, our x will be equals to the 16 divided by 25. Thank you guys for watching up until this point. If you have any questions, do leave them in the comment section below. Remember to subscribe, like, or share the channel if you find this content interesting.